And please begin.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's live webinar. My name is Aileen Riley, and I'm the Category Specialist for Safety at MSC. We will be discussing solutions for managing workplace safety and MSC SafetyMax, presented by our own safety specialist, Jeffrey Merkel. We are excited to offer today's presentation to show customers ways to successfully promote a safety culture in their own facilities. I do ask you please put yourselves on mute, and if you have any questions during the webinar, please put in the chat and we will do Q&A after the webinar. Now I would like to introduce our presenter, Jeff. Jeffrey Merkel joined MSC in May 2019 as a safety specialist, serving customers and MSC branches in Georgia and South Carolina. Jeff obtained the Certified Safety Professional and Qualified Safety Sales Professional designations in 2019. We are thrilled to have him present today. Jeff, the floor is all yours.
I think we might have lost Aileen there. But thank you for the introduction, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm really glad to have this time to talk to you today. So today we'll be discussing some of the aspects of managing workplace safety, and your time is an important one of these. So first, we'd like to start out by getting some feedback from you. How much time each week do you spend on your documentation and report and record keeping? Is it less than 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours, maybe 3 to 5 hours, or maybe even more than 5 hours per week? Please select one of the options by simply clicking on them. The poll should be open for everyone. You see it at the right-hand side of your screen. Just click and select Submit at the bottom. And just a few more seconds, I think, and we'll have our results. There we go. It looks like a lot of people spend less than an hour. Many people spend 1 to 2 hours, and some spend 3 to 5, and even there's a few that have more than 5 hours on their plate. But later in the presentation, we'll definitely have some ways for you to save some time while keeping up with those record-keeping requirements. So first, I'd like to introduce you to my family. This is us on a recent ski trip. Although now with the heat index here in Atlanta over 100 degrees, it's hard to imagine being out in the snow, but we were there. I'm proud to say that everyone wore their helmets the entire time they were on the slope, so this wasn't just posed for the picture either. But these are the people that depend on me to make it home safely at the end of each day. The reason I'm sharing this with you is that we'll spend quite a bit of time today talking about the financial costs of injuries, but we must also keep in mind the human cost, which can be permanent and irreversible, both to the person that is hurt as well as to their loved ones. Everyone in our organizations has someone that cares whether we come home at the end of the day, and getting our employees safely back to those people is ultimately what our safety programs are all about. Unfortunately, there's room for improvements in those safety programs, according to the most recent 4-year data available from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In 2018, 5,250 workers died on the job. That was 5,250 families that were changed forever. This was an increase of 2% from the year before, and an average of 14 work-related deaths every day of the year that year. And the rates of fatalities and total recordable cases were unchanged year over year. Further, 2018 also saw more than 2.8 million work-related injuries and illnesses in the U.S. So we can definitely do better. So why should we do better? Well, for one thing, according to the National Safety Council, these injuries and deaths cost businesses more than $170 billion in 2018, almost $1.2 million per death, and an average of $41,000 for any injury that required more than first aid. These numbers include both direct costs, such as medical expenses, workers' compensation claims, and legal fees, but also the indirect costs, like lost productivity, accident investigation, repairs to equipment, and corrective actions. There are cost of injury calculators that can help you estimate these costs, including this one that you can find in the Safety Resources section of mscdirect.com. You remember a couple of years ago when Tony cut his hand at work and needed 5 stitches? Using this calculator, we can see that that injury cost your company almost $42,000 in direct and indirect costs. In addition, the company had to have an additional $276,000 worth of sales to recover those costs. Fortunately today, Tony's doing fine and throwing the football again with his kids, but this could have been much worse and changed his life and his family forever. And his was just one of the 2.8 million injuries that occurred that year. I'd like to get your feedback now on another question, please. If you had some additional time in your day or week, where would you like to spend that time to improve your safety program? Would you spend it on training and coaching to make employees more knowledgeable about safety and better at their jobs in general? Perhaps more time conducting inspections and audits to ensure that the hazard mitigations you have in place are being used and are actually effective? Or would you spend the time on risk assessments and identifying hazards to take a more proactive approach and prevent incidents? Or would you instead focus that time on your documentation and record keeping? So please select your answer and you can click submit at the bottom right-hand corner and we'll get those results rolling in. And the poll is closed now. In just a few seconds, we'll have the results here. So it looks like a lot of people would spend time training and coaching. This, for me, was my favorite part of working out on the floor, was being there with the people. Just help them, make them more knowledgeable about safety, improving what they're doing in general. Most of our respondents would spend the time on risk assessments and identifying hazards. This is great to take that proactive approach, of course. So these are all good things to spend time on, of course, and the right answer really depends on where your company is on its safety journey. So in our poll, there were very few that indicated documentation and record keeping was where they would focus more of their time. Of course, our records are very important and often necessary, though. We must keep some records for legal reasons. Others help us to ensure that our actions get completed. Others we can use to identify trends and prevent future incidents. But it seems that very few people enjoy spending their time creating and organizing those records. Yet this is one area where it seems every year we spend more and more of our time. And that time that we're spending is really important to consider. Not only is there an opportunity cost where that time pushing paper could be put to better use, but there's a dollar cost to your company for your time. If we assume that the total cost, including benefits of an employee in like a supervisory or management role, is around $50 an hour, then reducing the time spent on record keeping by just 1 hour per week can save the company more than $2,500 each year. So how much time do you spend on record keeping, what it costs? We saw many answers across the board from less than an hour up to 3 to 5 hours per week. In my experience, I typically spend around 1 or 2 hours each week printing checklists and forms, distributing them around the plant, collecting the completed ones, and then transferring that information to spreadsheets if they were needed for reporting. And then came the monthly reports, which took another 3 or 4 hours to compile. So for me, this clocked in at least 140 hours a year, or around $7,000 by that metric. And on top of it all, I never really felt that this was the kind of work that the company was truly paying me to do. Of course, we can't just get rid of the records, but fortunately, there are ways in which we can reduce the time that we spend on record keeping, while also making those records a more useful part of our safety program. So first, let's talk about the types of records that we need as part of an effective safety program. So I typically group records under three main classifications. The one that many companies focus on are incident and hazard records. These document something that happened, why it happened, and then what we're going to do to keep it from happening again. Many of these types of records are looking backward and are often referred to as lagging indicators. Next, we have inspections and audits. These look at the current state of things. Are our policies and procedures being followed? Are they actually working to keep our people safe? Finally, we have risk assessments. These are more proactive records in that they show how we intend to prevent incidents from occurring. We take a look at a process, identify the hazards that are associated with that process, and then define mitigations that will prevent those hazards from causing harm to people, the environment, and to our business. So first, let's talk about incident records and hazard reporting. OSHA tells us that businesses with more than 10 employees that are not part of an exempt industry must record all injuries using the OSHA 300 log, the 300A summary, and the 301 report, or alternatives that capture equivalent information. Fatalities, hospitalizations, amputations, or the loss of an eye must be reported directly to OSHA. These reports must be made within 8 hours in the case of a fatality, or 24 hours for hospitalizations, amputations, or the loss of an eye. In addition to these, other injuries requiring treatment beyond first aid, or work restrictions, or a transfer to another job must be recorded using these forms. So OSHA also requires many businesses that have more than 20 employees to electronically report the 300A summary every year. As we know, the one person responsible for safety cannot be everywhere at once. Therefore, it's important to engage employees at all levels. When the employees are engaged as part of our safety program, they can assist us with identifying hazards before these hazards result in injuries. Some examples are reporting of near misses. A near miss happens when a hazard and a person come together, but the person escapes injury. A pallet not properly placed on racking which falls and narrowly misses somebody walking by is an example of a near miss. Hazardous conditions exist when a hazard is present, but a person is not yet at risk. Maybe someone notices the pallet that's not properly placed up there on the racking and recognizes the potential for it to fall. Hazardous behaviors. These are hazards that are caused directly by the action of a person. For instance, someone climbing the racking in order to reach material on a pallet instead of using a forklift or stairs. And don't forget our positive observations. Catching someone doing something right and recognizing them for that is a huge part of building a great safety culture. A passing forklift operator sees the precariously placed pallet up on the racking and stops what they're doing to fix it before it falls. This is the kind of thing that we should be recognizing and rewarding. So although not mandated by OSHA, these types of reports are important because when they are used and acted on, they have the potential to prevent the incidents that could result in injury. So you may be familiar with this graphic here. This is a version of the safety triangle, which shows a relationship between the numbers of incidents and their severity. For example, in a given period of time, a facility may have one incident which results in a fatality up here at the top of the triangle. They may have, in addition, 2 lost time injuries, 5 recordable injuries, 30 incidents which only require first aid, 100 near misses, and maybe 500 unsafe actions or conditions. So these numbers are, of course, illustrative, and they will vary between industries and the type of work performed. But the fundamental idea that near misses and unsafe actions or conditions occur much more frequently than injuries has held up since first proposed in the 1930s. Most importantly, it's highly likely that one or more of those near misses, unsafe actions, or conditions is related to the same circumstances that result in the injuries higher up the triangle. It's like getting a free pass. What this means is, if we're made aware of the near misses, unsafe actions, and unsafe conditions, we can act on those to keep future incidents from happening and preventing those injuries or loss of life. So if we go back to our racking example, and we analyze our near miss and hazard reports, we might see that we're receiving 1 or 2 reports each week of pallets hazardously placed up in the racking. We might even have had 1 or 2 instances where the pallet or material from the pallet has fallen, but fortunately no one was nearby. If we don't have these reports at all, or we have them and do nothing with them, then this will continue, and eventually someone will be near enough to a falling object that they will get hurt. However, if we recognize this trend and act on it, we may discover a number of things. We may have a forklift operator that's not skilled enough to safely do the job, and then we can provide them with additional training or move them to a less hazardous job. Or we may find that certain pallets just simply don't fit in the racking well, and that we need to use better decking, a different size pallet, or maybe just put these loads on the floor. Or we may find that there's a spot in the racking that's awkward for a forklift to get to because of the way the racking is configured, or there's equipment hanging from the ceiling, so that in this case we could move things around or even just restrict the use of that bay. Or we may find some combination of these and other factors, but regardless of the cause, if we act on them, then we have reduced the likelihood of objects falling from our racking and thereby prevented 1 or more injuries and possibly a death. As you can see, these records are a vital part of an effective safety program. And when your program is not effective, you open your business up to injuries, citations, and even lawsuits. So next, let's discuss inspections and audits. These serve to check the current state of equipment or a process to ensure that it's in compliance and the defined hazard mitigations are in place and being used. OSHA requires that certain inspections are performed, but it does not specifically require them to be documented. Some examples are listed here. Of course, the best practice is to document many of these, usually just using a simple checklist. The benefit of documenting them is that deviations and corrective actions can be tracked and completion of those actions is assured. You can also identify trends. For instance, if the rigging of a certain hoist repeatedly fails inspections and must be replaced after each inspection, then there's probably something that's causing that failure that needs to be corrected. The rigging may not be the correct type or rating for the material being lifted, for example. There are also several inspections that must be performed, and documentation of these must be completed. Some examples of these are the monthly inspections of that crane and hoist rigging, annual inspections of fire extinguishers, respirators that are kept only for emergency use, powered platforms and man lifts, and our general inspections of power presses. Then we have audits and reviews. These check the current state of the program or risk assessment to ensure effectiveness. Among these are reviews of common programs such as respiratory protection, confined space, and lockout tagout. Reviews of process hazard analysis and HAZWOPER are really only required if certain chemicals are part of your production process. The third classification of records is risk assessments, which are usually performed before the task or process being assessed is implemented. The purpose of a risk assessment is to identify all the hazards in advance and have effective mitigations in place before a worker is ever exposed to those hazards. Here are several examples, some required by OSHA, others best practice. At the top of the list here are the PPE assessments and job safety or job hazard analysis. These are often completed then left to collect dust on a shelf or a network drive. A better way of using these risk assessments is to actually incorporate them into your training program. A job safety analysis provides a step-by-step walkthrough of the task, which is perfect for training, especially if you don't already have a standard operating procedure or work instruction that includes that safety information. Other vital risk assessments include machine safety assessment. This should be done for all machines, including new ones. In the U.S., it's the employer's responsibility to ensure that a machine meets all applicable health and safety requirements. And I've seen many brand new machines come in with insufficient guarding or means for locking them out. A health risk assessment incorporates the required noise and respiratory assessments, but it should also include other chemical and radiation hazards if they're present in your facility, as well as ergonomics and environmental factors such as temperature and lighting. There are many tools to aid with documentation, from the trusty clipboard and checklist to spreadsheets to mobile devices connected to a network or cloud-based platform that can record photos and video. Although not completely gone, the shelves of notebooks full of records filled out by hand are quickly being replaced by digital data collected using a mobile device and stored on a network or in the cloud. And there are many advantages to using a cloud-based platform. Records can be created and accessed from anywhere, empowering and engaging employees by making it easier for them to report problems and provide their feedback. Forms can be standardized and certain information required to improve data analysis. No more half-completed forms with comments that you can't read. You don't have to spend time printing forms or checklists and making sure that the current version is in use out on the floor. Touchscreens and keyboards are sturdy and can easily be cleaned, which is also important where the spread of COVID-19 is a concern. Records are automatically stored and can be analyzed in real time. No need to wait for the weekly collection of near-miss cards on Friday afternoon, then scramble to enter the data into your spreadsheet before you can leave the plant. In my experience, safety data was typically reported to leadership on a monthly basis. As I said earlier, it usually took me several hours to compile and analyze the information for those reports. With a digital platform, the data is analyzed by the software in real time as it's collected and entered. Reports now take minutes to prepare rather than hours. This saves time, but it also gives you the ability to get that data to those who need it more frequently so that action can be taken. If we report safety information to company leadership just once a month, then how often can we really expect to talk about safety with leadership? Well, probably once a month. Company leadership often checks sales and financial data weekly or even daily, though. Now, you can enable them to do the same thing with safety, giving you the opportunity to talk about safety more often and making it a higher priority within your organization. As we've seen, there are many ways in which technology can help you improve your safety program and reduce injuries. Now I'd like to introduce you to one of those technologies. SafetyMax is a new safety management platform available from MSC, created in partnership with She Software. This is the SafetyMax employee portal. This is accessible to all of your employees through a URL. There are many types of reports available, as you can see, including hazards, near misses, and observations. We've also added functionalities such as COVID-19 and a well-being check-in that can assist you with keeping your employees healthy and your company operating during the current pandemic, but also beyond. You can make this easily accessible to employees by putting links on all company devices, but you can also create scannable QR codes with the link and post these in locker rooms, break rooms, outside break areas, anywhere employees spend time with their own phones. This makes it really easy for them to report something that they saw earlier in their shift. Another feature that I want to draw your attention to is the modules section at the bottom. From here, any employee can access a job safety analysis to review the safety mitigations that are relevant to the job that they're doing. This is another way to make those records useful by moving them from the shelf to the shop floor. This is what the interface looks like. So this particular one is for entering a near miss, reporting a near miss, but it's similar for all forms in the system. So as you can see, it's clean and it is very easy to navigate. This is what you'll see when you log into the SafetyMax main system. Risk, incident, and audit modules appear across the top, and a summary of actions that are assigned to me are down below. These clearly show you the time that's left until the actions are due or alert you if they're past due. If we enter the risk module, this is what we'll see. A summary of our risk assessment records so that we can sort by type, and then the ability to start a new record easily using the new record button here on the right. This is the interface for the incident module. Again, we have the list of records that can be sorted by record type. An additional feature with incidents is that they're color-coded by severity. So as you can see with these, the minor incidents are coded with green, all the way up to severe incidents coded with red. So if you have several incidents on here, you can easily sort through and determine which ones really need your attention because of the high severity. This is also where you would go to prepare and print your OSHA records. The audit module interface is the same as the risk and incident modules. So what you're seeing here is actually the list of inspection and audit forms that are preloaded onto the platform. And these are ready for you to use on day one. Finally, here's a look at the Insights dashboard. The system automatically updates this information as you add information. So it's available whenever you want it. Any of these widgets can be copied and downloaded into your existing report template, whether it's a document, spreadsheet, or a presentation slide. You can also just print the entire page, or you could just use the dashboard live in your safety meetings. And if you want to drill deeper into any of the classifications, such as your first aid cases or slips, trips, and falls, that's done simply by clicking on it. So as you know, there's many types of records that must be maintained and reported. SafetyMax is a great tool to save you time, make these records more useful, drive employee engagement, and help you improve the effectiveness of your safety program. Please contact your MSC sales rep for a demo, or you can give us a call or email to set one up. Thank you again for your time today. And Aileen, we can now take any questions that we might have gotten.
Jeff, thank you so much for all the great insights and information in this presentation. If anyone has questions, feel free to post in the chat. There's also the option to send privately to the host, and it looks like we have a couple that were sent that way. So I also want to note we have Eric Sims, the partner and executive North American of She Software, to field any questions as well about SafetyMax, along with Jeff, who just did the presentation. So the first question we have here is, what's the most common incident you find in the workplace?
In my experience and by the statistics, it statistically seems to be slips, trips, and falls, consistently year over year. Falls are by far the greatest, falls from a height are by far the greatest cause of fatalities in the workplace. And even just walking around a plant or facility, you often see things like hoses, cords, slick spots on the floor. This is another great way that a solid reporting system and engagement from your employees can help you prevent these incidents, especially if you see certain areas that are repeatedly having problems. That can draw your attention to areas where you might want to get your quality team to help you out with some additional 5S organization, get those things up off the floor and prevent injuries from happening.
Great, thanks, Jeff. It looks like we have another. It says, who can access the software?
Hey, Aileen, this is Eric. I'll be happy to take that. So from an access standpoint to SafetyMax, the real answer to that question is anybody and all employees can have access to SafetyMax. But we break that up into two different ways. So as Jeff showed us the portal, that's an open area where there's no login requirement to be able to enter data and provide information to the business as a whole. So those forms will be able to be filled out in a matter of a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, and so they can get back to their task at hand. We also have the main system, which does require a username and a password, which is also important to be able to secure and protect the data that the business is working with at that point. So at the end, kind of recap, two major ways: the portal unlicensed, everybody has access, and then the main system, which does have users and usernames and passwords, is a very small percentage of the business to be able to do things that are important, such as running reports, diving into analytics, and doing investigations through something that may have happened.
Great, and it looks like that leads into another one of the privately asked questions, which says, who can view management reports?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, really kind of right on line with that. So people that want to be able to view management reports would need to be a licensed user in the system of SafetyMax. So again, having a password and having a username and a password would give them access to be able to do that. So things like supervisors, senior leadership at the organization, and then they can then at that point take that data and be able to share that as they need to with the business as a whole.
Looks like we have another question that's in the Q&A from Matthew Robinson that says, how much customization is available with the SafetyMax system, or are you locked into canned forms and inspections?
So with SafetyMax, I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. So how much customization is there versus locked in? So what we do is we have a set list of audits and inspections available to all customers. And the reason that we're able to do it that way is we have everybody using the similar aspect of SafetyMax. So the main reason behind that is that right now and through an implementation, there's no implementation time associated with it. So it can be spun up and you can start using this right away. Now, it is a list of, there's a list of audits and inspections, or audits and inspection that are readily available. And She Software and MSC will be working together to continually build that list to make sure that there's a good list of everything for all people involved.
Awesome. So I hope that answers your question there, Matthew. It looks like that's the end of our questions, but if anyone has any more, feel free to ask in forums at BetterMRL. So I definitely want to thank Jeff for the great presentation and Eric for joining us for the questions at the end. And I want to thank everyone who participated today. So please be sure to check mscdirect.com/BetterMRL for the latest trends in safety in the industry. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.